What is up, you guys? Welcome back to my channel, and if you're new here, just welcome. My name is Gemma Jade, but today we are going to be discussing the terrifying Northfleet haunting. It feels so good to be back, and I'm sorry I had to take a little bit of time off because I had a bunch of birthdays and just some personal stuff going on, getting my store together and ready for the professional website. So stay tuned to the end of the video if you're interested in any of that. Also working on the third book and all that kind of stuff. So anyways, I wanted to talk about something other than entities and extraterrestrials feeding on us in our sleep, because I can talk about that for like the next 6 months and never get tired of it, but it's also really scary and a little bit draining too. So I'll get back to that subject, but I figured we could take a little break for the next few videos or so. I didn't think you guys would mind. This is one that I've been wanting to talk about with you guys for a while, and it takes place all the way across the pond from me, but probably quite closer for at least some of you. So let me know if you've heard about this one in the comments below. As always, let's jump right in. In 1962, in a place that is approximately 20 miles south of London, England, called Northfleet, a 28-year-old man named Sidney Maxted, his wife Margaret, and their 3 kids, Kevin, who was 6, Linda, who was 4, and a little infant baby named Claire, all moved into the home at 16 Waterdales. This particular little home was said to be quite charming, just like Northfleet was said to be itself back in that day. It was built back in the 1930s and looked basically the exact same as all of the other houses in the row on the Waterdales. Already I was confused because here we have roads, streets, lanes, drives, etc., and this was simply just titled the Waterdales. I think it's because it's like row houses or like track houses, but if I'm wrong, definitely let me know. The family was super excited to be moving into this lovely little home in an area that was described as peaceful, serene, and super safe. The family had already met most of the neighbors and got along great with them. Everything was so perfect, so I'll say it here. What do I always warn you guys when a new house seems too good to be true? I always say, if it seems too good to be true, it's usually haunted. Am I right or am I right? Anyways, they moved into the house and everything seemed perfectly normal, like I said. Things unraveled quite quickly though, and it's said to have all started one day when Margaret was sitting in the living room of the new house talking with her mother. The women were just shooting the breeze and were engaged in their normal conversation. Again, nothing out of the ordinary. Their conversation was interrupted by footsteps that seemed to be coming from one of the upstairs bedrooms directly above their heads. The 2 women stopped what they were doing and were completely silent because they wanted to make sure of what they were hearing. It sounded as though someone was stomping around and pacing back and forth right above their heads. It seemed somehow deliberate as well, as each footfall was heavy and landed with a definite thud. Margaret and her mother were the only 2 people in the house at the time and were obviously, and for good reason, extremely frightened. It got even worse within a couple of minutes when the footsteps were soon joined by what sounded like the furniture in that same room being dragged all around and possibly rearranged. Sidney Maxted was doing some gardening in the yard at the time, and so when his wife and mother-in-law started yelling for him to come quickly, as they thought they were hearing an intruder in their home, he made haste, and once in the house he left the women downstairs in case there were any danger, and he warily and carefully crept up the stairs to see what in the hell was going on, particularly in that room above the living room. Fully expecting to find a burglar or an intruder of some kind, Sidney was shocked to not only find the entire second floor of the home empty, but the furniture, even in that specific room in question, where the 2 women had sworn they had heard the ruckus just moments before, was as it should be. There was no rational explanation for the footsteps or the sound of the moving furniture. Of course, not having heard the noises himself, he tried to explain it away to calm the women down. He proposed that somehow the noises from house number 14, right next door, had transmitted to the second floor of their home, and at first the women just accepted this and kind of tried to put it out of their minds. I say this all the time as well, myself included in this, that it's amazing what human beings will try to convince themselves of when there is no rational explanation for a paranormal phenomenon, and they simply can't get their minds to deal with it. The activity did continue though, and at first it was always the exact same noises in the exact same spot, right around the exact same time of day, always coming from the bedroom directly above the living room. It seems as though as each day passed, the noises got more and more harder to ignore and explain away though. After a few months of this, the thumps, thuds, footfalls, dragging sounds, and bangs were so loud They seemed to be literally shaking the entire house itself. The walls would vibrate to the point where ceiling dust would sprinkle down onto the people below in the rooms. However, every single time they investigated any of these noises, there was nothing amiss and everything seemed to be just as it should be in the upstairs rooms. It wasn't just sounds anymore though, because now it seemed that every time the strange and unexplained noises would happen, they would also be accompanied by this very robust smell of chemicals in the air. As soon as the noises would stop and it would get quiet though, the smell would dissipate and disappear just as quickly as it and the noises themselves have started to begin with. I found that really weird. I don't know, that's just like extra at this point for me. Upon further inspection, the windows were always locked from the inside, and therefore the smell could not be coming from anywhere outside and simply being blown into the house on some breeze or something. It wasn't a passing breeze. It was like the noises, the smell, noise is gone, smell gone, just like that. Again, there was no reasonable or rational explanation for any of this. And they were trying to explain it away still, but I mean, how much can you really explain away at this point, right? I mean, no burglar in their right mind would come into a home in broad daylight, day after day after day, only to so clearly and boldly announce his or her presence, spray chemicals into the air, and then leave unseen without taking anything, completely undetected, and without disturbing a single thing. I mean, it just doesn't make sense, right? Like, seriously. So after just a little while of this happening several times a week for months on end, new phenomena started to accompany all of it. Things would seemingly go missing into thin air only to be found again in some random and unexplained place. The clock in the living room would be seen at any given time, either turning itself backward or forward, and doors would be open on their own right in front of the Maxteds and slam violently at all hours of the day and night. Lights, which could only be turned on and off by switches, would flicker on and off at random times all by themselves. The parents finally started to become extremely concerned when the children, young Kevin and Linda, would constantly start complaining that while they were tucked into their beds at night and trying to get some sleep, there would be scratching sounds coming from inside of the walls and dragging noises being heard across their floors. There was never any explanation that could explain any or all of this away, and it was now a daily and nightly occurrence. The Maxteds had no idea at the time that one of their neighbors, a Mrs. Harrison, who lived in the unit right next door, was also experiencing the exact same strange phenomenon. Mrs. Harrison would later say of her own experiences, quote, "The noise started off in the hall first, then it came like well, you can't very well describe it. It was like a child's ball falling down the stairs. And it was a sound, it was going," she smacks her hand 4 times, like that, all the way down the stairs, you know? And then it sort of the sound shot up into the bedroom to where I was, and it was like a scratching noise, you know, under the bed, and it sort of, as if it were bonking up the bed. But it wasn't just in one part of the bed, you know, it was all over underneath. And it was sort of scratching all the time, you know, but it wasn't a sort of clawing noise. It was like this all the time. She scrabbles about continually with her fingers on the arm of the chair, you know, under the bed, end quote. Each day brought more intensity to the phenomenon, and one night Mrs. Maxted had decided to once again get up and investigate. She fully expected to find nothing, as the family always did, so she was shocked and put into a fit of terror as the apparition of a little girl seemed to materialize out of nowhere right in front of her in the hall directly outside of her bedroom. As she watched in horror and unable to move due to absolute fear, the little girl started to approach her, and as she did, she turned into all shadow and started growing in size. The features of this now ginormous shadow person started to shift and change until the monstrosity in front of Margaret Maxted was definitely not a little girl at all, not in reality or in the appearance of the apparition. Finally, Margaret was able to let out a long and blood-curdling scream, and as she did, the demonic-looking shadow entity, which was now looming right over her, disappeared just as quickly as it had appeared to begin with. This wouldn't be the last time anyone had ever saw the entity either, as it seems as though it became emboldened after first showing itself and could then be seen all of the time, looming and lurking around the property. Margaret would later say that she felt a deep sense of malevolence exuding from the entity, and she was sure its intentions were not good at all. She felt and knew somewhere deep down that this thing was pure evil. The initial appearance of this particular shadow entity / apparition coincided with the children complaining of being poked and pushed by unseen hands. While they slept at night in their beds, their covers would be violently ripped off of them and thrown all about their rooms. This was enough for the family, and they packed up and moved out of their dream home, which by now had turned very quickly into a complete and total nightmare. However, this isn't the end of the story by far. As you may have noticed, I did not title this video The Haunting of the Maxteds. Another family quickly moved into 16 Waterdales, a 25-year-old named Eric Essex, his wife, also named Margaret, and their newborn baby were charmed by the house, as the Maxteds first were. But again, it didn't take long for all of the terror to begin for this young family either. It started the same with the deliberate disembodied footsteps and the sounds of dragging furniture, but very quickly escalated. One night at around 2 o'clock in the morning, Eric was startled awake by what sounded to him like whistling directly in his ear. Almost as soon as he opened his eyes to this strange and unexplained noise, the whole entire bed started vibrating violently and wildly, and the bottom half of it was being lifted off the floor altogether. As he looked around in complete and total panicked sense of dread and terror, it would only get worse. Eric swore he saw a female apparition which was headless and wearing a long, old-fashioned gown. She was surrounded by a sort of pink light, but disappeared quickly once he started screaming. And he was wailing, according to all accounts. This particular ordeal was enough for the Essex family, and they immediately after this ordeal packed up all of their belongings and moved out of the home. At the same exact time that Eric and his family moved out of the home, the Harrisons next door also called it quits and decided the charming little row house wasn't worth the terror and possible danger they were put in with the unexplainable and seemingly random paranormal activity taking place on a very regular basis. Remember, this is the early 1960s, and it wasn't okay to speak of such things. If your house was haunted, even if it was a legitimate case of paranormal and or supernatural activity, and even if you saw, heard, and felt all of these things with your own eyes, to mention it would probably be a one-way ticket into being considered crazy, or worse, most likely if you're female, you'd be put into an asylum. Despite it being such a taboo subject, though, word had definitely gotten around by this time that there was a possible haunting at 16 Waterdales and possibly next door too. The landlord could no longer find tenants who wanted to rent the place, and despite it being completely empty of people and also of furniture and all worldly possessions and all that, neighbors and passerby would often report hearing strange thuds and booms, phantom footsteps, disembodied voices, and some even reported witnessing the entire place vibrating in place on more than one occasion. The house was completely abandoned, and yet anyone could plainly see that sometimes the lights were on and sometimes they were off, with no one inside to be turning them on with the switches. This went on with the home vacated for several years when, just as suddenly as it all seems to have started, it stopped. Keep in mind though, guys, I looked and try as I may, I couldn't find a single shred of information on this house before the Maxteds moved in, as that seems to be when the activity in the home started, but I can't say for sure, as in every single source I came across, it did start with the Maxteds. I was able to dig up a little bit of information on the history though, and it makes the whole thing so much stranger to know it. There were no deaths associated with the property or land according to all accounts that I could find. I did find information that the Maxteds were indeed the first ones to ever have experienced anything in the home, but I'm skeptical as I couldn't, as I said, find any evidence of anyone who had lived there before having reported anything or not. Like, there's no information on like their names or anything like that I could look them up and see if they had in fact come forward later and reported anything or anything like that. So there's no information. I would really like to know the history of the land. When was it first settled and by whom? Who was the first person to own it, and what was it used for before the homes were built? These are questions I know I'll never find answers to, but are in fact ones we should always ask ourselves when dealing with any type of haunting at all. It's the first thing I'll look up about a home when I'm asked to do a walkthrough, when there's paranormal or demonic activity or alleged or suspected. It has to have started and come from somewhere. After the Essex family moved out and the activity eventually stopped, no other tenant has ever reported having experienced any sort of strange activity while living in the home. I mean, the shadow entity that originally presented itself as a little girl and then went full-blown shadow demon is concerning, especially if people who have lived there since then have little kids. These things don't just come and go like this, and when they do, there's always a reason for it, guys. Trust me when I tell you. I would also like to know if the Maxsteads ever experienced anything else like this after moving out. This whole thing to me screams of someone in the home having had abilities and accidentally opening up some sort of vortex. But then I have to ask myself, how is it randomly just closed? Because that doesn't happen either. Ghosts and spirits and even demons don't just get bored and walk off. Unless a house where they were tormenting someone is vacated. But then they'll come back when someone else moves in. So I don't have enough information on the history of the land or the area since these hauntings and this activity to give you guys any further credible information. Anyways, that's the end of this one, guys, and I was just kind of trying to bring you all along here on my train of thought so you can see my thought processes that I go through when covering cases like this, specifically hauntings in general. That's all I have for you today, guys. Please give this video a big thumbs up if you enjoyed the content, if you enjoyed hanging out with me, spending this time with me. Share out with a friend or some friends who you think may enjoy this content as well. I would really appreciate it. Subscribe if you haven't already, and please go on over to MoonBearOracle and subscribe over there. I haven't done anything in months, but I have a lot of new stuff coming out for that channel. Hopefully I can get to the Lionsgate portal, which opens on July 26th and is at excuse me, its peak on August 8th. I finally am selling my crystal bracelets, okay? Not mine personally, but like the ones that I'm making. I don't have any charms right now, but they will look like this, and I have basically any crystal bead you could want, and if I don't have it, I will get my hands on it for you. So reach out to me about pricing on that. Shipping's always included. I am getting a professional, yes, to do my website where I'm selling spell jars. I am selling my manifestation and intention sprays. I can explain a lot more about it than I can by word of mouth. I'm going to be putting my readings live 1 hour face-to-faces, and then also the remote ones, my manifestation sessions and techniques, all of the things that I offer that most people do not even know that I offer as service is all going to be in one place, and I'm hoping to have that out within the next 2 weeks. So stay tuned for that. I'm really excited about it. I'm still selling the 4-ounce manifestation sprays that I customize to you that are $18.95 with a free gift with shipping included. I have the 8-ounce jars that I'm doing spell jars in. Like I said, I've got the crystal bracelets now. So guys, hit me up. All right. MoonBearOracle@gmail.com for any of the professional stuff. Also, if you'd like a copy of Missing the Fae Theory, my first book, or the book I just did with Steve Stockton that you guys made a bestseller, thank you so much. Encounters with Evil, 101 Terrifying and True Stories. I do not have copies. Everyone bought all my copies, so I have to get more. The links will be in the description box, along with ways to donate to the channel, PayPal, Cash App, Vero, V-A-R-O. I do have that now. Some of you are asking for it. And if you join my Patreon for $20 a month or more, you will automatically every single month get a free remote personal intuitive oracle reading as a thank you from me, along with all the other stuff that I plan on doing very, very soon. It's all in the works for my patrons. Those of you who stuck with me and didn't abandon me due to my lack of being able to put out extra content for you guys, I really do appreciate it, and I will definitely make it up to all of you. Also, if you want to send me a gift, I have oracle decks, crystals, all kinds of stuff on my Amazon wishlist gift link, which is also in the description box. So my issue of Paranormal Press magazine finally came out, and I love what they did with it. I love the pictures. It was my Demon Claire story that we put into the article. It's a really great article. They did amazing things with my photos. There's more on the inside. Again, it's the Demon Claire article of my first encounter with a demon when I was a little girl living in Clifton, New Jersey. You can get that online at, I believe it's paranormalpressmagazine.com, or just type in Paranormal Press Magazine. I've got to get a link for you guys for that. If you would like a personal intuitive oracle reading from me, please email me at moonbearoracle@gmail.com. I offer, like I said, the remote ones are the 1 hour face-to-face manifestation sessions, the manifestation intention sprays, now the crystal bracelets, only bracelets for now, guys, because I'm making them myself. If you're like, what's a personal intuitive oracle? What is that? I am an oracle. I am a seer. I use cards to bring the messages through. It's kind of like tarot, but actually it's kind of a lot different. Same theme. But if you want to check it out on Wednesday nights from 7:15 p.m. Eastern Time to 11:15 p.m. Eastern Time, I am live with Ghost Dragon ZW. on my channel right here, and I just do a 1-card pull, which is a weekly reading for anyone and everyone that comes in. Guys, it's a great time. We have fun in the chat. Come on in and check that out. I don't think I'm forgetting anything. Oh, Steve Stockton is premiering season 2 of Disembodied Voices. It's a show on the Paraflix network, and that's going to be, I believe, on August 7th. You can check with him, or I'll have more details coming soon. And then season 3, I don't know when it's going to be out yet, but I am going to be on Disembodied Voices on the Paraflix network. So that is really awesome, guys, doing big things. Again, hit me up if y'all need anything, any encounters. Listener Encounters 16 is coming, guys. I'm just so far behind and trying to catch up. Love you guys so much. Be kind to each other. It doesn't cost anything. Be kind to yourselves and never accept anything less than others being kind to you. Always go in grace, smile at a stranger, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.